Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne, a place where we have conscious conversations about things that really matter in our lives. And now here's your host, Roxanne Derhaj.
Hi, everyone. It's Roxanne Derhaj of Authentic Living with Roxanne. Thanks so much for tuning in again this week. Today, I have a special colleague, Deborah Connors, with us today. Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I'm great. Great. Nice to talk to you.
So, Deb and I met a couple years ago, not formally, but virtually through a colleague. And she's been in the space of changing the workplace conversation. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her background, and then we're going to talk a little bit about culture, which is where her superpower is. So she's a captivating speaker, storyteller, author, and workplace coach. She researches the latest breakthrough in workplace health and culture around the globe. She's interviewed many of the leading organizational health experts, which forms the basis of her work, teaching leaders how to radically shift culture so that people can flourish, which is, what a time for the topic that you're dealing with, Deb. She's a prominent figure in the story of how Canadian workplaces have become better places to work through her development of the Better Workplace Conference, which she led for 17 years. And this powerful initiative created a whole generation of workplace health professionals and a huge community of practice. She speaks on how to shift practices in the workplace to create environments that allow for creativity, innovation, engagement, and fun. Mm-hmm. So Deb, we are in a world right now, obviously, that all these things we need to talk about. But so let's just talk about what got you wanting to be involved in workplace culture.
Well, I think that we have all worked in cultures that are less than functional, that are not the happiest places to be, and I've worked in a few of those. And I remember at one point finishing a contract in an organization and walking out the door and going, "There has got to be a better way." Mm-hmm. And so I did a master's in this field, did my research in an organization out in the field, and really my whole raison d'etre is about, changing the conversation, shifting cultures to cultures where people can flourish, because it is totally possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what a timely discussion, right? So you've talked about having people flourish before we've entered this time. So I want to talk to you about out there in the corporate world prior to what's been happening in the last 2 weeks. What kind are some of the best practices for leaders to have their corporate culture flourish? What are some of the things that you've been talking about for years that leaders need to do to create that kind of space for people to flourish?
Okay, well, I think even in the best of times, we don't necessarily do such a great job with culture. We in this society, we've got this better, faster, harder kind of mentality about work. I often say, we hire people for their creativity and their innovation and their knowledge and all of these great things. And then we put them in these cultures of meetings and crisis and places where people cannot necessarily give their best. So, what we need to do in order to create those kinds of cultures, we need to be compassionate leaders. And that means, having empathy. It means listening to people with fascination. When you listen to people, you understand what they want. We need to increase positivity in our organizations. And that's not just, thinking positive or talking about how great things are. It's actually, there's a lot of research behind how if we increase our positive emotion if we increase our positive interactions, people are more creative, they're more innovative, they're more engaged, they're more productive. And so all of the things that any employer would want, all of us would want in our interactions. And we know that the most positive teams, the ones that are most productive, are the ones that have 5 to 6 positive interactions for every negative one. And most teams are at about a 1-to-1. So
Wow.
we got a ways to go anyways.
So a 1-to-1 and a 1-to-6 ratio, like 5 to 6 touch points, to be able to feel connected. And if you think about it, I think that's an application that if any of us get that kind of touch points of positivity, regardless of what we're dealing with, whether it's pressures or deadlines or all those things, we're able to really figure out a way to make ourselves stay connected to be able to deliver on what we need to deliver.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's so easy to do in your meetings. Often in meetings, you'll hear, if we look at that positive, negative interaction, you'll hear a positive, like someone will say, hey, I've got this great idea. Mm-hmm. And then the next comment is, well, we've always done it this way, or, that's not going to work, or so it's a negative. And so once that person who has all those great ideas hears that enough, they're just not going to come up with those ideas anymore. They're not going to share them. And we've probably all been in meetings where nobody speaks, right? We just sort of go through the agenda. Nobody's really engaged. Nobody's really offering up great ideas, because that's just the kind of culture. And then we've probably been in the opposite. You've been on teams where they're led well, there's a lot of positivity, people are engaged, everybody's getting to speak, and we see a lot more creativity, and we do a lot more great things in those kinds of teams.
Because I think, to your point, I talk a lot about mental resilience and authenticity and connections in leadership. So we talk about a leader being aware, right? Mm-hmm. Like being internally aware so that they're in line with what they value, what they're looking for, just as a person, but also as the leader of a company or a sector. Yeah. In your opinion, out there with leaders, like if it's a 1-to-1, do you find that leaders are trying to get more connected to themselves and to their passions so that they can impart it onto their workforce? Or do you think that that's kind of a slow skill to come about in senior management?
I'm seeing a change. I'm seeing, we're hearing so much more right now about mindfulness, about some of these words are becoming more common. Mm-hmm. And a lot of leaders are really looking for tools and learning how to lead differently. So, as an example, Dr. Michael West in the UK, someone that I interviewed for my book, has done a lot of research with the National Health Services. And I'm sure now they're, testing all of this because they're being really tested with what's going on over there with the pandemic. But in that particular research, they coached leaders of teams on how to create more positive, resilient teams. And what they found is that with just a 5% increase in positivity and resilience in the teams, there was a 3.3% decline in patient mortality. So aside from, employees being more engaged and all of the things that you might expect, they saw this really significant impact on patient mortality, which was related to, less mistakes and less accidents, because people are more positive and resilient. So there's definitely ways of increasing that in yourself as leaders and within your teams.
And I think to your point, like I think a lot of leaders, the higher up on a senior level, those hires sometimes is done on a tactical end. It's on bottom line. If it's a business development and research and development, those types of things. And we expect certain things from those individuals at that level. And sometimes we kind of, we go back again to saying soft skills, but really it's such a core skill for people to be able to connect, right? We need them to be able to achieve, absolutely. But at the same time, the expectation is less than. Now I think we're starting to see a shift, but that maybe they get things done. So maybe we don't have to have as much expectations about how they communicate.
Well, if they're going to succeed in terms of the bottom line, they need to learn to communicate differently or to lead differently, because, and the research is there now, right? If we look at, for example, teams that do an effective team debrief at the end of their meetings or at the end of a big project, if there's an effective debrief done, those teams that do that well are 25% more productive. So if you want higher productivity and you want more engagement, you need to do these kinds of things. And an effective team debrief is a mindful activity. It's it's really looking at not what did we do in terms of our tasks, how did we meet those objectives, but it's how did we work together? What worked? How did we support each other? Did everyone have the opportunity to have the input? Because if we don't get input from everyone, I mean, often we just hear from the loudest people. Are they the most intelligent? Maybe not.
Right.
But there are ways, of course, of hearing from everyone, and those are skills that are really valuable.
So it's such an important thing, right? Like, so to debrief, and I know in the clinical field, that's something that, it's kind of normative to talk about what went well, to talk about what could you do differently, what did you learn about yourself, those types of things. But in the corporate world, to be able to apply that, how powerful that could be, to have, and I was just talking to someone a little bit about personality types, and I'm an extrovert, she was an introvert, and we're talking about that because sometimes your value is the person that's able to be introspective, but they are not the frontward facing person to put up their hand and share as much. But those people sometimes, I often relish in looking at them because they sometimes have such insight because they step back and watch, right? And then when they do actually speak, you're like, whoa, where'd you come up with that? Versus the extrovert that's kind of like, I'll tell you what I think because it's coming to me right now. So I think it's so important when you say about debriefings to have everybody have a voice. And then in fact that, everybody is heard or seen or feels like they have a space at the table. And then naturally 25% productivity increase. What a gift.
Yes.
And really simple.
Yes. There's a practice called reflective action that Dr. Robert Quinn talks about. He's one of the other people I interviewed for my book. And reflective action is finding that sweet spot between being too reflective, that you can't make a decision, to being too active, where you're making decisions too quickly and then having to clean them up because you're making mistakes. And what he says is, our organizations, if they're going to err on one side or the other, they tend to err on the too active, that in today's society. And so finding that reflective action with your teams means finding new ways to get input from people. And one of the things that I often suggest is giving people some time within a meeting. We don't tend to do that. We tend to jump into practices like brainstorming. And when you brainstorm, you hear from the loudest, the people who just, say whatever's on their mind. But if you give people a little bit of time to reflect and make some notes, and I like using sticky notes because you can gather that up. You can have people put it up on the, flip chart or something. And then you hear from everyone. And then you might still brainstorm, or you might still go around and ask people for input. But people who need some time or want that time to reflect, or should reflect, everyone should, get that opportunity. And then you do gather more input from your team rather than just hearing from some people.
Maybe more of a true pulse of what's happening in that room, right? Because you're so right. And I've been, was in corporate for many, many years. And, the extroverts always get heard.
Yes.
And the conscious leader that I would often say would recognize sometimes to try to elicit information from others that they know had something to say, but not everybody likes to share it, or, like to your point, share it immediately. And you could see the conscious leaders that were aware of that and was able to kind of gauge the room. It's almost like they had a thermometer and they could go, I know there's more going on, but they're connected, they're aware, they're in tune with themselves and also with what's in front of them. And intuitively, they ask the right question to sometimes elicit a response, potentially from people that find it a little bit more difficult to speak up or maybe articulate. People that are able to step back
Mhm.
sometimes. And I think as an extrovert, I've found that I've always, that's a skill that I've always worked on, to be able to just try to be the watcher from the back of the room. Because
Yeah.
I find that sometimes I come up with more innovative things when I'm able to do that, which is,
Mhm.
you know, in my younger years, it was my less inclined skill to be when I was, you know, in corporate.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that term that you use, conscious leader. And, you know, you could replace that with mindful leader, like just the learning that skill of being mindful and being conscious and being aware and recognizing, you know, the skills and the attributes that are out there in the people that work for you, and being able to pull that out. It's a great skill.
So let's kind of talk about what is all around us. And I know, you know,
You have
it's
to.
we have to, unfortunately, Deb. I'd like to gloss over it too, but with the time that we're in, with all the things we're
Yeah.
talking about, and we're talking about culture, and we're talking about flourishing, which is where we need to get back to eventually. But right now, you know, we're at the you know, we're at the undercurrent of the wave at present, and the impact that we're seeing out there. What kinds of things are you seeing out there in culture or in leadership or frontline employees? What's the pulse out there based on what you're seeing with your clients?
Well, what I'm hearing is a lot of fear. Fear from people of losing their jobs, fear from business leaders about losing their businesses, business owners who are fatigued because they're in a position where they're trying to be that positive person for all of their employees and you know, to support people, but they're just getting fatigued themselves. Team leaders who are stressed, and they're asking, you know, how do I maintain positivity and resilience in my team now that this is all of a sudden a virtual team and we're in a totally different environment? So it's like really quickly having to learn how to adapt. Yeah, just that quick adaptation that, you know, every day. For a while, a couple of weeks ago, things were changing on a daily basis. Like you wake up today and, you know, what's new and what do we have to adapt to, and how do we have to change quickly? And you know, we're pretty good at that, but it is fatiguing and it's stressful.
So people are, you know, I think it's like, you know, I like yourself, I'm seeing the same kinds of things, and you're trying to obviously offer support and offer direction, but it's almost like, you know, it's kind of like we're in quicksand. And everybody's trying to find a bit of safety, but you know, you might feel safe for a bit, and then you're like, oh, there was a bit of a drop there, and then something else happened. So, you know, leaders are trying to do their best, but they're also people.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so they're experiencing the same kinds of things.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you would say that leaders need to be thinking about in this time to be able to not just equip themselves, but also equip their teams to be able to get through something that none of us have ever really truly prepped for before?
Exactly. Yeah. I would say, you know, find easy practices that you can incorporate that don't take a lot of work but have big benefits, and apply those practices to yourself as well. So we were talking earlier about positivity, and you know, the research on positivity shows us, as I said, that as our positive emotion increases, we are, you know, we're more engaged and we're more productive and we're more creative and innovative. And it's not just about, you know, feeling good or thinking positive. It really changes our optimism, and it impacts us physically. Like we sleep better and we have lower blood pressure and better immunity and all kinds of things that we want right now. So some of the things that you can do with your teams, and then of course apply these to yourself too. But as a team leader, you know, try to make your meetings as positive as possible. So if you're having virtual meetings, and of course you can apply this to your workplace when you get back to a physical workplace too. But you know, start with a win. At the beginning of your meeting, rather than, often we start with these long updates, and meetings are just full of people updating each other on where they're at and what they're doing. And it's not really that productive. So in a good time when we're not dealing with this, I suggest this as well. Start with a win, a challenge, and what do you need? So I would share something great that came, that I did, or that our team did, something that we won at. And then I might say, I'm challenged with, this is what I'm grappling with today, and here's what I need from you as a team. So we're being very focused about how we operate the team, but we are starting with that positive, that because we are winning at things, we are doing, everyone's out there doing the best that they can, as you said. You could start your meetings as a team leader with a positive story. From within your organization, you're going to be able to find those every day, because people are doing amazing things. And if you can't find something, go onto the internet and look for all the amazing stories of courage and kindness and positivity that are happening out there. Start your meeting with a round of gratitude. We know the research on gratitude shows that if we do a daily gratitude practice, and this is something we can all be doing right now, sitting down every day and writing down at least 3 things that you're grateful for. Over time, what that does is it changes your brain chemistry. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. You start to look for the positive more often. You start to see more possibilities. And so there's 20 years of research on this now. We know that it works, and we should all be doing it. And it takes us 30 seconds a day. So why not? But start your meetings that way. Give people an opportunity to, just go around your virtual table and say, here's what I'm grateful for. It changes the culture of your meeting immediately when you do that, and people love it. And people come to your meetings on time, and they look forward to them, because it's it's a positive way to start. So those are some things I would suggest for teams and individually as leaders, if we can be doing that daily gratitude. There's Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who's done a great deal of research on positivity and how we increase our positive emotion and how this impacts us in the workplace. There are 3 main things that she talks about to increase positivity, and one of them is gratitude, one of them is meditation, and one of them is mindfulness. And meditation, this is a great opportunity right now when most of us are working at home. We have the flexibility to take the time to do a short meditation every day. What we know from the research now is that a cumulative effect of 80 to 90 minutes a week increases your positivity level. So that's really only 12 or 13 minutes a day. It's not like we have to sit for an hour, if you're not used to meditating. But it has that same impact on increasing your positive emotion, which makes you more creative and gives you that possibility thinking and some of those tools that we need right now. And then mindfulness, we can increase that through meditation, but there's other ways of increasing our mindfulness, which is just being present, through practicing mindful listening, listening to each other with fascination, not thinking about what I'm going to say first, next, but just actually really hearing you and setting the intention that I'm going to really listen. So yeah, those are some simple practices that we can put in place every day, right away, that can have a really big impact.
And I mean, I think, the thing is, it's the element of positivity. And I know we talk about it a lot, and a lot of environments do it, but then they do it maybe sometimes, and then they don't do it other times. But really, we're in a time with, it's vitally important. I like you, I have a gratitude journal that I leave next to my bed. And before I go to bed, I always will write at least 4 or 5 things that I got up and I had a great breakfast, or I was able to look out in the woods and enjoy the sunshine, or whatever. And it doesn't have to be anything like a big epiphany, but it's just getting the brain accustomed for you seeing the positive things that are really something very simple. And I think really we're being humbled at this time to look at all the little things that we're seeing, like in my community, people, and I'm sure out in BC where you are, all the florists, are putting out fresh flowers on their stoops so that
Yeah.
anybody in the community can go by and pick up fresh flowers. Like all these little things that, unfortunately, through adversity, we really come together to look at what little things that we do that can really shine some kind of positivity in our communities.
Yeah.
I even think about your meetings. Like if you have a multinational, you could probably ask people to kind of talk about some of the positive things that they're seeing in their environments.
Yes. What has happened because of the pandemic?
Yes,
That
right.
it wouldn't have happened before. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, those things we might see, but we might gloss over because we're so busy. But through this time, we are really, really seeing it. Or, kids in my neighborhood, they have chalk all over and they've been writing little messages, or people putting teddy bears in windows.
And the hearts.
Yes, and the hearts. Or here in Niagara, where I am, the hotel industry is shut down. So what has happened is throughout the entire little city, there's been hearts that have been illuminated at that time. So just what a nice thing to see, even though really where we are has been a bit of a coast down, because the community itself is based mostly on tourism.
Yeah. Well, and there's some other things in terms of increasing mindfulness in your teams, like having device-free meetings.
Yeah.
And if we have meetings like we are right now with Zoom, where you can see each other and look in each other's eyes, then, people are not like conference calls half the time. I think, are they checking their emails? Are they actually listening?
Right. It's like, okay, I could be here and I'm not listening to you.
Yeah. So have a device-free meeting, put your devices away, go on Zoom, see each other. Have that connection that we so vitally need right now when we're, a lot of us are alone and not connected. Have a minute of silence at the beginning of your meeting, just a minute, a mindful moment, to be really mindful and bring yourself into the present. Check in. How are people doing? Like, just check in with how people are doing emotionally and what they need. And then that team debrief at the end, like, how are we doing as a team? Like, what can we do differently to support each other?
So the things that I think of is that I would think that leaders have even more pressure now because they're having to really be on a lot. Not that they weren't before, but they could kind of go home and kind of, replenish and then come back and keep going at it. But right now we're not having that, I'm going to call it a stopgap, truly, to be able to truly replenish. Because unfortunately, I would say that most people are trying to get information, but it becomes awfully difficult. And I don't know if you would agree with this, Deb, to kind of stop it so that you don't let it pilfer into your mind. And again, if you're on a senior leadership team and now your entire workforce, unless your vital services are at home, there's a lot of different pressures that are coming. So people are having to be able to perform, stay positive, manage their stressors, manage their families, and maybe spouses that are at home or maybe losing jobs. That's a lot of moving parts all at once.
So I think, when you were talking, I was thinking, one of the things leaders can do if they're working at home and so are others is this is a way of walking the talk, but also doing something for yourself at the same time is, have a workout together with your team. Go out in your backyard or your basement or wherever it is, and with whatever equipment you have, go online together and do something together. Let people see that you're human too, and you're taking care of yourself and you're walking the talk, by doing that. Would certainly be one thing. And I was thinking too that, when you said being always on, there's also a risk as a leader of, just sending out emails at various times that may not be appropriate. And we sort of got past that by having, boundaries around email. And now here we are, we're not in the workplace. And so sort of setting those boundaries up as well, and remembering that to, turn off at a certain time and spend time with your family, and then turn on again,
at appropriate times.
Yeah.
So what are some of the definite don'ts that leaders should think about right now? Because I'm going to think that, because of the stress levels and the fear and stuff like that, some leaders may go into overdrive where they're not managing themselves as much as they should. So what are some things that people should be aware of that they should stay away from right now, that maybe if it was business as usual, potentially, Deb, they'd probably be able to kind of do certain things, but there's certain things that I would say leadership can't get away with, that they maybe potentially would have been glossed over before?
Well, I think, don't do business as usual. Like, don't think that things are going to be usual. Right? Don't expect employees to react as they usually would, right? And people are going to react in all different ways. So just, being understanding of, various things that come up. And as I mentioned, I think don't, send emails at all times during the day and night. Set some boundaries, some definite boundaries for yourself. And, my husband has set up an office in one of our spare bedrooms, and goes in there at a certain time in the day and leaves at a certain time at night. And sort of setting up that time for yourself so that you're looking after yourself, you're walking the talk, and you're, setting a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because people are going to look to you for direction and how you're managing yourself. And it's even more probably going to be more heightened now because when we feel out of control, we're looking for more safety at that time, and people are going to look to the leader. So the better that the leader is able to do some of these things, to your point, and for people to feel like I can maybe I wasn't as relatable as a leader before, but to really think that through as how might I be able to extend to potentially start a new practice, to be able to show the people that maybe I'm learning the skill. I may be a little bit awkward. I have training wheels, but I'm trying to develop that skill to be able to reach out. I think would be something in this time would be really well received with people that are, feeling that nothing is consistent.
Yeah, this is your time to shine.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a time to, play with different things like social media that you may not have been using before. But use those different modalities. Everyone is just doing their best to, reach out and do things differently. So, and I would say, like, really, communicate. Like, the people are fearful, so communicate as much as you can and as transparently as you can, but as thoughtful as you can with the messaging. I've talked to some people who've received these long rambling emails from their, the owners of their company, and they don't know what it means. And and I think the owners are probably trying to do their best about being transparent, but really be thoughtful about how it's going to impact people. And it's okay not to know all the answers. It's okay to say that, and just letting people know what options are available to them, what services are available, if they're going to be potentially laid off, what are the options? Excuse me. And just, taking a moment, as I said before in your meetings, for mindfulness, for gratitude, keeping things positive.
So really, we're talking about, you talk about relational transparency amidst chaos.
Yes.
So you want to be able to be relatable and recognize as a leader, because you have to still, set a level of decorum that you don't send those. Even if you're thinking about it, and maybe this is something leaders can do, is write about it, don't send it, look at it, have somebody else that maybe has some more objective eyes look at it again before you hit send. Because to your point, it becomes, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, Deb, but how much is too much?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
At this time, right? And I mean, you want to be transparent, but you also want to give hope as much as you have at this time.
Yeah.
So to try to really kind of make sure that you have the right level of sharing versus maintaining safety, I would say, as much as you can at this point.
I think so. And if you can be thoughtful, mindful, and compassionate in your message, you're going to do fine.
And I like the point that you said, touch points, right? Make it different, be innovative, right? Like, so if you want people to flourish, and, you know, through this time, as much as we are in uncertain times, what kind of things could you potentially do that would make people think, I'm so glad I work for Deb Connors, that even amidst this time, I can think, wow, I'm happy, you know, that I get to report to someone like that, or I have someone like that in life. So to really start to think along those lines. And, you know, I think of, you know, I have two colleagues that have done something special that makes me think of them, because they sent me, one person sent a card, and the other sent a picture of some time we had spent together, right, last summer. So, you know, it's the little things like that. So what do? I have them propped up on my desk, thinking, because they're thinking about me and thought enough to do something special like that. So you're right. It doesn't take a lot of big things, you know, but it's the thought that I'm important in them enough for them to be able to think about me, to be able to, you know, take the time to be able to extend in such a way, you know, so it's the small things that I think that really are counting through these times.
I think so too. And if you want people to flourish and go in those upward spirals, you need to be flourishing and going in those upward spirals yourself, right? So, you know, taking the time now, maybe when you don't have a commute to work, to put that extra time into getting a little bit of extra sleep. You know, we don't give a lot of emphasis to sleep in our society, and it impacts us so much in terms of our mood and our positivity and our engagement and productivity, and so, you know, and you know, just how it impacts our behavior and how we connect with other people. Do some of the things that we were talking about here: meditation, gratitude, taking the time to do some extra reading. I mean, all of those things are very helpful. You're setting an example, but you're also building yourself up so that you can, you know, be that strong, positive leader for the people that report to you.
And to model it, to your point, like be innovative with, if I'm going to go and do something outside, like even though they may not do it, with maybe, you know, hitting record on a post to say, oh, by the way, I'm trying this today. Just thought I'm challenging myself, because again, that adds the element of I'm being transparent. I'm doing what I'm, you know, things that I'm suggesting you do. And I just want to let you know, I look silly doing this, but I just wanted to share this with my team, and then maybe send it out, you know, to your team and say, okay, well, I challenge you. What silly thing are you going to try that maybe you haven't thought? I would never try this, and share it with your team. So little things like that. But the innovation, I think you're right. So if people feel connected, then they're able to share, and then they're able to flourish, even though, you know, times are uncertain.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it just lets them know that you're doing it too, right?
Of course, you need to demonstrate and model, and not just tell people this is what you think they should do, but also let them see that you could also demonstrate that you're capable, and you can try new things. So Deb, I know before I let you go, any sense of what kind of things do you think that leaders should be thinking in this gray zone to kind of prep to the point where we will eventually go back to our positions where we're physically there again? Anything that they should be thinking about?
I think everything we've talked about is transferable. We should be doing it in the workplace. If we're just starting it now because we're in this virtual space, take it back with you. You know, keep your teams positive and resilient, and engaged and productive and creative. And you do that through, you know, keeping positive emotion high, positive interactions high, and there's some very simple ways to do that. So some of the things we've talked about here today, just take the time to learn it now, practice it now, and take it back to the workplace with you.
So to look at this pivot as, you know, unfortunately the adversity happens, but what have been the positive things that really should be implemented anyway, and take that back with you, and not think because in 2020, because of COVID-19, we had to do this, but really what are some of the, yeah, we ought to do it. And why don't we just continue the practices so that people could feel connected? And then when people get connected, they get innovative and they flourish just overall. And you get absenteeism goes down, and presenteeism goes up, and all that good stuff. We get the benefit of all those things.
Exactly.
So Deb, I know you you have a course, and I'm sure people out there, companies that are listening, may want to reach out to you about some of the things that you do in the workplace. So tell everyone where they can reach you, or some of the things that you can offer.
Well, my website is deborahconnors.com. It's DeborahConnors. I'm sure you'll have that up somewhere, Roxanne. Yes. And you can find all my services there, but we do have a course called 8 Weeks to a Better Place to Work that we do once a year, and it happens to be coming up in 2 weeks. So it's very timely. It starts on April the 16th. What we do in this course is we focus on a lot of the practices that we've been talking about today, and much, much more. It's based on my book, A Better Place to Work, Daily Practices That Transform Culture, and that's full of 50 different practices that we can incorporate to build a better workplace. And I bring in expert speakers as a part of the course. So this year I have Dr. Robert Quinn, Dr. Graham Lowe, Marianne Bainton, Mary Lou McDonald, Sherry Torres. They're all experts in various fields of organizational health, coming together online. You know, it's a really great place to access that expertise. So I would love to have any of your listeners join us. Normally the course, it's an 8-hour course. It costs $6.95, and we're leaving it at the early bird price this year just to make it more accessible to people. So it's $4.95. We have a team rate that's even better, which is basically 3 for the price of 2, so $9.95 for a team of 3. And I also wanted to offer a 15% discount on the single rate price to anybody who's listening. So if you're interested in joining us and you want that discount, just get in touch with us through my website. We'll send you a code so you can get a discount on that. So that course is coming up. Also, my books are available for those who want to take, you know, the opportunity to do some extra reading right now. And we do online coaching and consulting. And so we're actually put out an e-blast this morning just asking people what they need right now. Are there things that we can develop to help you? Because we, like everyone else, are dealing with a new reality here, and we're trying to support as best as we can.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So for anyone interested in learning more, actually, I just recently had Marianne Bainton on a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
You know, lots of experts in the arena of culture. So I think it's an opportunity, and if you have the time, it would be something that would be beneficial to where you are based on if you just became a virtual team, if you're, you know, if you're part of an ongoing team. These are all things that you could learn from people that are the experts out there in OD. So again, what am I taking away? I think, you know, the positivity that we know we need to implement in the workplace, I think it's being accentuated right in front of us. None of us knew that this was going to happen. None of us ever thought probably potentially we would experience this time, but it's a time that really has made the world pause. And I think we are starting to see the benefits, unfortunately, of this adversity and the positive things that we're experiencing individually, as families, as communities, and globally, and to really take those learnings with us into whatever this new reality will be. And I think we can implement things that we probably always knew we should, but you know, obviously the time is calling that we start to be kinder and gentler in the world. And if we're able to do that, we're able to impact everyone. You know, in some way we're all connected, to recognize that and to start today. So again, Deborah, thanks so much for joining me. And if anyone's needing any information, I'm a mental health and wellness specialist, and I do speaking, obviously virtual at this point, training and coaching, and you can reach me at roxannederhodge.com.
Thanks for tuning in to Authentic Living with Roxanne, creating the space for positive, healthy change. Roxanne is a keynote speaker, psychotherapist, and coach. To work with Roxanne, visit roxannederhodge.com/blueprint. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Roxanne.